Of experts in the spotlight. I'm Tammy Alvarez, the founder of the Career Winners Circle, where we empower business leaders to make a big impact and love every Monday again. This session and discussion is going to be epic. I've got Lori Crever here from Protege Power. She is my soul sister when it comes to all things mentorship and coaching. So Lori, welcome.
Great to be here, Tammy. Good to see you again.
Yes, absolutely. So for people who don't know you, maybe you can give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. I have been involved with, I'll call it the humanities, theater, dance, poetry, since I was 4 years old. Ran off to New York City when I was in my 20s to pursue acting, did bit parts on a soap opera, worked as personal assistant to a Grammy Award-winning jazz singer, had many grand adventures, but somehow, Tammy, landed back in Minnesota, which is where I grew up, working for 2 decades in international banking. And I was artist in residence, more or less. I'd say that was my informal title, because what I did for the international division of the corporation where I worked was I was responsible for being a good steward and creator of the culture, workplace culture. And through that, one of the many tasks I had was operating a formal mentor program. And so many people nowadays would know me as author of a book on mentoring, how to find a mentor. Title of the book is Protege Power.
Excellent. And talk about a pivot, right? CWC, we're all about creating your next big thing and not getting stuck in that soul crushing grind. And so, moving from the bright lights in the big city, into financial services is probably one of the most epic pivots that I've heard about. And for those of you who don't have the book, Escaping the Career Trap, Lori's whole story is in there. So make sure that you get that book and read that story. Lori, what's your personal history with mentoring and coaching, actually on both sides of your career, right? Whether it was in acting or, playing the big girl job in corporate America.
Yeah, I really value both of those roles, mentor and coach. When I think back to my time in New York City, I was pretty good at identifying coaches. In other words, someone that you would pay who's really strong in certain areas, on camera skills or how to piece together small business wise what you're doing as a freelance person. I was crap on identifying and working with a mentor, but I think a lot of it was arrogance. So one of my themes that I've learned over time, and it applies to coaching as well, but for sure, if you have a notion of identifying a mentor, someone that you're simply going to approach and say, hey, could you help me out for 6 months or 12 months? And generally you're not hiring them, right? It's just someone who's got unique take on your industry. Maybe he's already in the company or organization where you work. You better darn well be humble and coachable. Otherwise, especially since they're not getting paid, it's a big old waste of their time. And that part of it, to bring that humility to any type of career coaching situation, I think that can be a real stumbling block. But running a formal program inside a big corporation, and ultimately 900 people went through my program, that would be a through line, I would say, is that the mentees or proteges that gained the most, they were eager. They knew they didn't know everything and they wanted to advance. So they were just earnest about optimizing and taking, kind of extracting all the richness, wisdom from the person that they had the benefit of having as their mentor.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I was in, financial services as well, right? That's my jam. I was always in and around that. And early in my career, because for those of you who know my backstory, I didn't go to college I didn't get my degree till I was 40. And I was a managing director at 35. And so I played differently. But I remember after leaving high school and being one of my only friends who did not go to college because I had no money and no ambition to be able to do this. I remember my first job. And it was working for a temporary staffing firm in Philadelphia. It was a Manpower franchise. And I was doing light industrial placement. So I was placing warehouse workers and construction workers and all these things. So I'd go out in my little business suit and talk to these, foremen and stuff about what they needed. And just, business would come my way. Surprise, surprise, right? A cute little 18-year-old who doesn't know any better, having a great time out there. And I kept getting more responsibility. And I will never forget, I didn't even know it at the time, But the franchise owner, Marty Klein, clearly saw something in me that I didn't see. You know, I'm a small town girl, didn't go to college, just trying to, make ends meet. And every time there was something new that needed to be done, he would put me in charge of it and then mentor me on how to not screw this up because it was his money. And, that mentorship that I had for 9 years was absolutely better than I believe any college degree that I could have gotten from 18 to 21 in terms of just really, understanding how business worked, thinking a different way, learning how to think, period, and all of those things. And then throughout my professional career, I never really had a coach. But what I would find are these people who believed in me, who saw things in me and would make me very uncomfortable and put me in situations or expose me to things. And I remember there was a women in leadership mentor program, and I was not into this at all. I just moved to North Carolina, and I was like, I'd rather go on the golf course, make some friends, and do things that way. And my boss is like, it took me, an arm and a leg to get you into this thing. You're going. So I was like, all right, I'll go. And it turned out it was like the top, like 2% of the leaders within Bank of America, which is at the time was like 400,000 people. And so here you have this mentorship and this access to these women that are just amazingly powerful and talented and insightful. And it was just a gift that, just kept on giving. And so throughout my career, while I never really had formal coaching, I had tons of mentorship and was always put in those top talent programs in terms of leadership development. And unfortunately, those things are pretty much dead today. And, for big companies and a lot of investments getting cut there. And so when you think about the difference between coaching and mentoring in today's environment, because I think we both have had, really good success and fortune, good fortune with having people in our corner. How should people today think about that?
Well, there are so many varieties of coaches that are available out there. I feel like with seeking a coach, you have a luxury of getting fairly granular. Let's say you are considering for your small business, should I employ or deploy a chatbot to help create that initial interface that would keep an interested lead talking to my organization and transform them into an actual prospect and ultimately a human to human conversation? You should seek somebody out who's expert in chatbot. Start listening to podcasts where they're talking about this. Connect with that person on LinkedIn. See if they'll give you, some solutions or services, or can you hire someone to be that granular with you? I don't know. This is an opinion of mine. I don't know that that's necessarily appropriate that you would ask someone to so-called mentor you in that. To me, that feels like, no, you're asking them to really download and coach you into very exact knowledge set. Mentoring is going to be more of, in my experience, a broad brushstroke. It's more looking at the longer game, the medium and long game of your career, and reflecting on that wisdom, and somebody that's got experience, as I said earlier, within your actual company or organization. I also find that there are some great coaches out there for what you do on career transformation, where you are bringing in a toolkit. It's very, not just strategic, but tactical. Maybe, Tammy, that's a good way we could look at this, is a coach is someone that you're hiring to move into a pretty tactical space with you. Whereas a mentor is likely someone you're going to sit down with maybe once per month for an hour, or get on a Zoom call with them. And those are generally going to be more strategic, broader discussions, both fabulous, both so vital to your growth. I had this thought the other day, when I was just entering the workforce, and you hit upon this, Tammy, a moment ago, I was like just a mass of blind spots. And then hopefully that improves. But then my next thought was, well, 30, 40 years later, are you really so confident that you're not still swimming in a lot of blind spots? So either way, seeking out a coach that's appropriate for what you're looking to solve right now, or in a more gentle sense, seeking out a mentor to altruistically be a sounding board for you in a, more broad strategic way, it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I love having both. And I do agree, like the whole free advice thing, it's like, be careful with that, right? In terms of how many times you want to lean on the people that love you for that versus pay versus mentor. One of the other things I found has been really successful in the way I coached my team when I was leading corporate, and they wanted a mentor. And it's like, okay, so why? What are you trying to accomplish? And the goals are squishy. It's like, how much time are you really willing to put into this? And, well, I'm working a lot of hours. I'm like, okay, then let's figure out, how do you use mentorship in a way that's productive for both and time sensitive? And so what I would always help my leadership team and their teams with is what I would call situational mentorship. And so if there's a leader that is absolutely a rock star in the thing that you want to master, whether it's giving great presentations or analyzing complex data or whatever, then seek out that advice on that specific thing. It's like, how do you do that? Then it's not a year-long thing, right? It's much more precise, and you're going to the people that you respect the most to gain those skills that you're looking for. And so I think that's another, good way to think about, how do I find a mentor? Because it's kind of hard to find somebody who's willing to give up a year of their life with you. And your end of the bargain is twice as hard as what they do, because they're just dispelling the knowledge that they already have. I also have found, which was interesting, from a coaching perspective, now that I'm on the other side of the table, is that people who come in for coaching, especially on their own time, but not necessarily, are committed to getting this right.
Yeah.
Are committed to getting over whatever those roadblocks are, because they have had enough, and the pain is big enough, where the opportunity is exciting enough to where it's like, okay, we're going to do this now. And so much of it, that you were talking about before, just goes to that, personal commitment piece. And we just started a new customer satisfaction survey with our clients. And that is one of the questions, is how much effort have you been putting into this? Just so they can kind of self-reflect in terms of, am I really doing all the things I'm supposed to do? Or have I kind of, taken my foot off the gas a little bit? So it's both sides are rewarding, as long as you put the time and effort in.
That is so correct. And I want to truly underscore such a great distinction that you made in what you've just been sharing. And that is, for individuals that are listening to this, do I want a coach or a mentor? How can I differentiate? Think through, are you potentially approaching someone to mentor you for free, right? Just to help you, where it looks like it could be taking advantage or maybe even insulting them. You're causing me to remember, someone asked me, this is probably 5 years ago, to mentor them on some things connected to their budding small business. Okay. And I was somewhat intrigued with what they were doing. So that was a bit of what was in it for me, right? Was, I will be learning about this kind of unique flavor. It was dance, right? So it was a different part of the arts world that I'd not been exposed to. But instead, 3 months in, what I realized this person was doing, she was sending me, now I had communications part of my function also in banking. She was sending me all of her web content, promo material, brochures, and asking me to edit. And so 3 months in, I said, we need to sit down in person. We were both in the same market. And I said to her, diplomatically, I said, I think what you need to do is hire a marketing consultant and pay them. What you've been having me do, it doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel like what a mentor would be. It really shouldn't be work for the mentor. Honestly, it shouldn't be work. It should be, I am the wise Buddha. I am listening deeply to your dilemmas. I'm contemplating and I'm reflecting back some concepts or a TED Talk you should watch or a book I would recommend. Come talk to me next month. That's being a mentor. I hope I'm not being like too overly broad, But to have someone ask them or compel them to be so granular that they're spending an hour and a half or 2 hours or 3 hours in the minutia and giving you detailed edits, that's unfair. That feels like, no, that's not what you would ask of a mentor. You need to hire a professional then to do that.
I call that unintentional freeloading.
Hello. I love that. I have a new
I
term.
do that, and I always assume people are coming with, from the place of good intent, but it's like, we actually get paid for that, so happy to help. Come on into the family and let's take it from there. So you've seen a lot of epic success stories and some, some not so success stories throughout your career as well. So when you think about the space of coaching and mentoring, what's one of your favorite stories in terms of whether it's a client or a colleague that you've seen really benefit from the whole mentoring process?
I had someone come into my formal program, and what I love about this story, talk about a blind spot, just meaning the person didn't have the life experience to know how to tackle this. But once it was pointed out by the mentor, it was just like all those dark clouds lifted and parted. It was so, so simple. So see if this strikes a note with you, Tammy, coming from your large corporate background as well. It makes a big deal, makes a big difference in a corporation if you have an officer title. When you are awarded assistant vice president, when you are awarded vice president, when you are awarded senior vice president, that carries a lot of meaning, a lot of weight. It may not entail a bump in pay. It might not mean you get increase in pay. It's a stature and status honor. And if you are doing external facing work for the corporation, that can make a real big difference, right? People would want to be meeting with the senior vice president versus someone without a title or assistant vice president. And if you're listening to this right now and thinking, that's just really unfair, wow, people shouldn't place so much importance or value on it. Okay, maybe they shouldn't, but guess what? They do. If you don't believe us, read a book about unconscious bias, right? Like read Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, but like how people make instantaneous snap decisions in a nanosecond. So I had this person come in, they wanted to get a mentor. They were working in sales, so they were definitely external facing. And a few months into the mentoring relationship, what really was sitting at the surface for the protege was she was so frustrated that what looked like a colleague who was performing at a similar level as she was performing had already gotten their vice president officer title. So it took courage because this particular person didn't want to come across as a whiner or ungrateful. This is something sometimes a woman has difficulty with. I don't want to come across as ungrateful for the opportunities. But I pushed her, you got to talk to your mentor about this. And the mentor speculated, gee, I wonder if your manager is simply really busy and they haven't thought about, like it didn't occur to them, because in the organization where I was, you could submit and present, make your case for moving people up in their officer title once per quarter. So it's like when that window closed, then out of sight, out of mind, Anyway, guess what? That's exactly what was going on. As soon as, so the mentor, because the mentor had a lot of experience with this, helped the protege to structure a diplomatic conversation, advocating for self, but not coming across as like a jerk. And the manager calmly said, oh my gosh, you're right. You definitely have earned your vice president officer title. Let me make a note, and I promise I will submit that the next quarterly round. Boom, handled. Now, this is something, imagine, we all have annoying things like this at work. You could stew about this and complain about it to your friends over drinks for years, and it would not change. So that mentor, that's a great example of a mentor already being in the organization, knowing the inner machinery of how these things work, rendering it not complicated at all. And look at that. The mentor, that gut instinct was correct.
It's funny how that works, because internally we make up our own stories. And in the absence of data, we always assume the worst, right? So I thought that, that's really where the mentors can help is like, this is how it works. Go talk to them. I'm sure it's fine, versus getting all jammed up, and wrapped around the axle. I know one of my favorite mentorship stories is actually with a client. So this is kind of a coaching and mentorship story. And she was up for managing director in 2 years. And the competition was fierce. And she knew this. She's like, this is, I'm not competing against a bunch of slackers here. This is an MD. And so it's hard. And I've got, my plan is to be ready in 2 years. And so she came to me for help on exactly how to do that. And one of the things that we talked about is having her go back out and reach out to the, 10 most influential people that she's ever worked with. Now, like everyone else, you forget who you work with, right? And you're like, you move on, you never stay in touch. And so we got all that guilt stuff that we're going to talk about. But she looked and was very surprised to see how far each of them had advanced in their careers at other banks. And she's like, oh my God, these guys are like in women, men and women are both like in the nosebleed seats, like just crushing it. So she reached out to all 10. 8 responded and 6 were willing to help. And all she was saying is, I'm trying to make MD. I want to do something different within the organization to really make an impact. And then before she knew it, she had people from these other organizations giving her market perspectives and, information and ideas on where the headwinds were going to come from and where the opportunities were. And with all of this ongoing external mentorship just from people who cared about her and her career, she was able to bring that new idea to the organization, get the right executive sponsorship, and lead it over the finish line in time to qualify and make that MD promotion in her first year, which was nearly impossible. But, mentors come from every nook and cranny of our lives. And I think the more, we always think about networking and mentorship when we're job hunting, right? Versus just let me use it to get smarter. Let me use it to have new perspectives and to be able to bring something unique to the organization as well, right? So, so much opportunity there for sure. So what advice would you give to someone who's trying to decide, should I even get a mentor or coach, or, should I stay the course and kind of do things the way I'm doing, which is on my own and with a few, friends' advice over cocktails once in a while?
Mhm. Well, I am just such a huge advocate for be in pursuit of getting some guidance and counsel. And part of that is the power, just the magnitude, you said it earlier, of what a person who's not you can see in you that you do not see about yourself. And this is sort of like we've been given some very good ideas about how you could filter through your thinking. Gosh, am I looking for a mentor or a coach? But part of it too is your gut. And I will sometimes recommend perhaps seek out an informational interview as a starting point with someone whose career you admire. And go in with some planned questions just to refresh people. An informational interview is not a job interview. It's fine if you have your resume with you, but don't shove this at the person. It's not about trying to get them to give you a job, but just to ask them some questions about their career. That can be part of, and I know you espouse this also, Tammy, is some intelligence gathering for you and help to just distill for yourself. Maybe you want to do a pros and cons list, right? Again, a coach is someone who can bring in a robust toolkit, things that are just going to blow your mind you've never heard of before. They're going to come on very likely with a large amount of energy and intentionality to help you. A mentor's like a different gear on your gear stick. Different gear on the gear stick, but both very powerful. And make sure you have a commitment. And I advise have some clarity on what it is that you want to work on. If you are just generally miserable, you absolutely need to contact Tammy. You absolutely.
Thanks for the
That's
plug,
a
Lori.
good place to start from. but I don't know, again, in our scenarios that, I don't know if I would take your general misery to someone that you want to invite to mentor you for free. That might be, I mean, very few of us have masters in psychology, right? I feel like with a mentor, it's on you to sell it. Sell. Why should they invest in you? Why are you a good investment of their time? How are you going to be an outstanding return on that investment? So you got to go in there with like, hey, here's where I'm at. This is what I'm working on. I think I see a path to get there, but I probably am missing some pieces. Would you consider being my GPS? I'll come to you. Again, make it very easy for the mentor. It should be almost effortless for them, and help me out here, right? But have that distillation in either pathway. What is it that you're looking to crack the code?
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. And I think everyone should have all of it because life is really complex and the dynamics of the environment that we're navigating in is changing faster than ever. It's not going to slow down. And I think just with all of the the mental junk that's out there, having people in your corner that want you to win as much as you do is always a good thing. And then the world needs a lot more positivity right now. And so I think coaching is really good. If you have a destination, you've got those roadblocks and you want somebody that's 100% dedicated to you, right? Mentorship is important in terms of all the things that you were talking about. Then one other thing that I always had, and it was reasonably informal, but the way I considered it was my personal advisory board. And these were peers of mine where, we would all get together and just, obviously there was many martinis involved, right? But we would have these conversations over what we're struggling with and just poke holes in ideas. And these are not people in my organization. These are, other people that I worked with throughout my career and stuff. So I think having a bunch of different inputs to continuously grow, get new perspectives, and also add that advice too, because you want to give as much as you get is a great way to think about how to fast track anything you're trying to accomplish, as a professional. I think as a business owner, moving from big corporate for me to entrepreneurship was a hot mess. I mean, I screwed everything up. I had no idea what I was doing. Thought I did, which is, then finally I'm like, all right, knucklehead, how much more your money are you going to waste before you actually hire a coach and figure out how to get this right? And so now I always have coaches in my corner, whether it's a financial coach or a strategy coach or whatever, because I don't have all the answers. And it's lonely when you're sitting here, running your own organization with a team that's depending on you. And you want to make sure that you're really driving in the right direction. So no matter what side of the house you're on, I think, coaching, mentorship, that advisory board, all of those things just help you grow and help others grow at the same time. So
I love what you just disclosed. I really hope that people heard that. Coaches have coaches. Something that really blew my mind a few years back, I was leaving the theater. I'm on a comedy improv team and we perform around my market, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. And so it was, 10:30 at night or something. Story on National Public Radio, interview with the actress Glenn Close. And she shared that this very specific movie role she was pursuing one time in the preceding decade, right? So she is well into her career, ginormous success, credibility, knocking out of the park every time. She reached out to her good friend, fellow actor Kevin Kline, to inquire, what was the name of that audition coach that you worked with? I'd like to work with that person. Tammy almost drove off the road. I thought, hang on. Glenn Close, who's been nominated for Academy Awards. She's won a Tony. She's won an Emmy. I mean, she's just stellar career. I thought, okay, if she is hiring an audition coach, to prep her and work with her before she goes to an audition. Who am I? A coach and seek out ongoing mentoring. So that I think is just a golden nugget for people to know. People that are really skillful and exceeding expectations, there's a good chance they have one or more coaches. How smart.
Yeah.
Very smart.
I can't live without them now, right? It's just, and they change because as my business grows and evolves, my needs are different. And, you know, my advisory board changes, you know, because my ambition has like just outruns the people that I've been with over the past 6 years, which is totally fine. Everybody's in a different spot. But I constantly try and play with people who have been there before me, but not so far ahead that they've forgotten what it's like to be in my situation, in my shoes. And I think that's really where the sweet spot is. It's like they still have the battle scars, you know, and so those are fresh and the advice is relevant. And especially in the things like emerging technology. I think you were with me on my couch this morning over a cup of coffee as I was trying to figure out, okay, what are we doing in 2025? And is this the year of the chatbot? So I'm like, oh, you were hanging out with me this morning. And so we're thinking about all these things in terms of strategy, which is really exciting. So for everyone watching, go get a coach, get a mentor, get an advisory board. No one wins alone. And whether you're a business owner or a business leader, make sure that you and your team have all the tools that they need to succeed. So Lori, I have absolutely loved this conversation with you. How can people work with you and where can they find you?
They can easily find my book, Protege Power. It's available as hardcover or digitally as an ebook and audiobook. Find it on Amazon and other common platforms. And then you can look for me on LinkedIn. Naturally, I do speaking and facilitating. My primary affiliation is proudly with the Center for Mentoring Excellence, which is based in Seattle. And we come in, you know, for 12-month period of time and work with individuals like I was when I was in my prior organization, how to really build out a robust fruit-bearing formal mentor program to help you develop your talent, but also retain your talent. That I would say is like the primary business I'm in these days is talent retention through excellence in mentoring in your organization.
Great. Thanks again for your time today. I really appreciate the conversation.
My pleasure.